Welcome to the Insomnia Coach podcast. My name is Martin Reed. I believe that nobody needs to live with chronic insomnia and that cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBT-I techniques, can help you enjoy better sleep for the rest of your life. Sara lived with insomnia for a year and resorted to sleeping pills because she didn't know how to improve her sleep. Luckily, Sara did discover cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and after just 8 weeks of implementing CBT-I techniques, she went from averaging 4 hours of sleep each night to 6 hours of sleep each night. 1 year later, Sara now averages 7 hours of sleep and no longer takes sleeping pills. In this episode, we'll learn more about how Sara got her sleep back on track and how she regained confidence in her ability to sleep. A full transcript of this podcast and an accompanying video can be found at insomniacoach.com/podcast. Thank you so much, Sara, for coming on to the Insomnia Coach podcast today.
It's okay, no problem.
So can you start off by just telling us when your sleep problems first began?
It was the summer of 2017, and I've suffered from health anxiety for a long time, but it was particularly significant then. And from having been a person to have perfect sleep and could sleep anywhere at any time, I suddenly started waking up in the night with these health worries, and then just got a massive fear that I couldn't go back to sleep. And it sort of escalated from that summer.
Yeah. So was your main difficulty just falling asleep at the start of the night, or was it more to do with you just find yourself waking during the night and then just finding it really hard to fall back to sleep, or maybe both?
It was a little bit of both, but more when I woke up in the night. Sometimes though, I couldn't go off to sleep initially, and then even waking in the night, I still couldn't go back to sleep. But mostly it was waking in the night and then not being able to go back at all.
And do you think that you had difficulty falling back to sleep or just falling asleep at the start of the night because you were worried about health issues, or was it specifically you were worried about sleep, or maybe it started off as one and progressed into the other?
It started off as one. It started off with waking because I was worried about certain things, but then it got to the point where that was sort of like at the back of my mind more, and the fact that I couldn't sleep was the big fear. I'd wake up and I'd think, oh my God, I can't go back to sleep. I've got to function tomorrow. I've got to go to work. What am I going to do? And then I just couldn't go back to sleep.
Yeah. So how long was this going on for before you, for people that don't know that you enrolled in my online coaching course, how long were you experiencing these issues with sleep before you found out about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia techniques?
It was about a year. I had poor sleep, and it got to the point where it was affecting my life so badly. I just knew I had to do something. So I Googled and tried to get some research on techniques to help me, but I felt I needed more than that. And where I live, there's not a lot of support for anything psychologically, as a problem. So I just had to find some help. So that's what I did.
So before you found me, before you found out about CBT-I, were there what kind of things did you try to get to help improve your sleep? Because I find that people with insomnia, they're kind of experts when it comes to all this long list of tools and techniques that they've tried or they've heard about. What kind of things did you try, and did you find any of them helpful before you found CBT-I?
Well, I did have to resort to some sleeping medication because I just thought, what can I do? I was worried because I was not sleeping hardly anything, and I thought I need to get some sleep somehow. So I did try herbal remedies first, and then I actually went to see a doctor, and he prescribed me something which is a bit stronger, and I was sort of using those, but I was also trying to use some techniques like relaxation, music, anything really, talking to people, going on the internet, looking at forums of other people if they had any ideas. But I just felt I needed to speak to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and have more contact with them, so I could have some techniques given to me. I felt I needed something more personalized.
Mm, right. Yeah. So had you ever come across sleep hygiene when you were looking into solutions for insomnia?
Yes, I Googled everything because I'm a big
Yeah.
Google person, and just having like trying a bedtime routine,
Hmm.
um, and that does help to get you to go off to sleep. But then my biggest problem then was when I woke in the night, not knowing what
Mm.
to do then, because you're already in bed, you've done all that preparation for sleep.
Yeah,
So it's the
absolutely.
waking up.
Yeah, it was kind of a bit of a loaded question there because pretty much everyone with insomnia has tried and heard of sleep hygiene, right? Because it's kind of the first thing that you hear about as soon as you
Mm,
Google how to improve your sleep,
yeah.
or talk to people that aren't really familiar with insomnia. They'll always mention sleep hygiene. But it's really interesting because you kind of mentioned that sleep schedule, which is probably really the only quite helpful part of sleep hygiene for people with
Mm,
insomnia. But I think it was really interesting what you just said was it's fine to prepare and help set the stage for falling asleep, but how is sleep
mm.
hygiene going to help you when you wake during the night? Because there's
I know
really
you can't
there's
get ready
really
for
no
bed again.
guidance. Exactly. Yeah, because sleep hygiene really is kind of this preparation process, just helping make sure the environment is kind of helpful for
It's
sleep.
right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't really do
Yeah.
anything when the struggle is kind of more internal.
No, it doesn't.
So okay, so let's fast forward now. So you enrolled in, you found me, you heard about CBT-I. Had you found out about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia techniques before you found me, or was it you found my website and that was what prompted you to discover CBT-I?
I was aware of cognitive behavioral therapy for health anxiety previously, so
Hmm.
I knew that those techniques can help you rethink and your way of thoughts. And I hadn't really heard of it for just insomnia, but I came across your website,
Hmm.
and I thought I'm going to try this.
Hmm. Okay, so you decided to try it. You enrolled in the course. Um, so you start to pick up. First of all, you start just by learning more about sleep in general, just because a lot of people with insomnia, they have these kind of beliefs about sleep that either aren't very accurate, or they're just not very helpful. Like this idea that we need to get a certain amount of sleep, like 8 hours
Mm,
is the classic. And then we move on to the more behavioral side of things, with the CBTI techniques, such as creating that sleep window to help build sleep drive, to help you
mm,
kind of overpower that arousal, that anxiety that interrupts sleep, and getting out of
mm.
bed when you can't sleep, all these things that you're now familiar with. So as you were going through the course, what would you say like the key things were that you learned that you really found helpful?
Well, initially, I started off your course with the sort of like the free trial,
Hmm.
and your advice with the emails were enough for me to think, oh gosh, I was looking forward to them because I was thinking every day you sent me some tip, and when I got to the end of it, I thought I need to do more with this.
Hmm.
So when I actually started the course, it was a huge, big support for me were your feedback with emails, and like it was so personalized and so long, and it was almost like you were talking to me. And all of the techniques you were given, I knew that if I tried them, I could speak to you about it. Not speak, but type to you about it.
Hmm.
And so I just I had faith that all the things that you were telling me to do were working, and they gradually started working. And the more they continued to work, the more confidence I had that it was going to be successful.
Hmm.
But it was quite hard. It was quite hard to do.
Yeah,
But I just try. I'm the sort of person that just needs the step by step approach, and
mhm.
that's what your course did for me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, that's good. I think it's really important to emphasize that The techniques themselves, they're quite straightforward. They're quite simple, when you read about them on paper, but they can be really hard to implement. They can take a lot of effort and a lot of commitment and consistency, especially because it can take a little while for you to see results. So, for example, if suddenly you're told to, instead of spending 8 or 9 hours in bed in the hope of getting more sleep, and it's suggested to you to maybe spend closer to 5.5, 6 hours in bed, that can be a hard initial mental obstacle to get over. And the idea of getting out of bed when you're in bed, tossing and turning, trying to sleep, that as a concept, how is getting out of bed going to help me get more sleep? These are really hard
But
concepts to
yeah,
get over, right?
but do you know when you suggested the sleep window, and mine was 5.5 hours? Um, I actually look forward to not being in bed that long, because I used to get so stressed being in bed, thinking I can't sleep. I just thought the hardest part was for me to stay awake until 12
Mm-hmm.
midnight, and then I was still waking in that 5.5 hours and going down for half hour, coming back, and then knowing that I was to get up at 5:30. But I just did it. Even when I
Mm-hmm.
went on holiday, I did it. I just thought, I'm going to do this, because then I'll get more tired. And then eventually, in a couple of days, I'll sleep for that 5.5 hours.
Right. Yeah.
So I just continued with it.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. I like the way you just said, I just did it, because I think it can be I think the battle with the internal debate that can go on is a real big
Mm,
barrier to sleep. Those mental gymnastics. Should I go to bed now? Should I get out of bed? Should I be going to bed now? Should I stay in bed? Should I
mm,
do this? Should I do that? But if you just tell yourself, I'm just going to do it, it's almost like
mm,
pretending you're a robot, engaging that robot mind. I'm just going to do it. And it just
yeah.
eliminates all of that mental effort where, should I do this, should I do that, oh, maybe I'll have a day off today. You just do it. I think
Yeah, I
that's,
did it.
yeah.
Because I had an 8-week block off from school. I'm a
Hmm.
teacher, and I knew that that was my time to do it,
Hmm.
and I had time to implement it all without having to work as well.
Hmm.
But you have to do it regardless, because even there's periods of time now that everybody gets problems with sleep, and stresses in work can make it more so. And I still have to go to work now, but I still do those strategies, so it's
Hmm.
possible to do. You don't have to have a holiday to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I normally actually suggest to people to try not to make any changes to their lives whilst they're implementing the techniques, just because, if nothing else, when we go to work each day, it kind of forces us to have that daytime routine. So and it avoids
Mm,
it avoids that temptation of staying in bed for a little bit longer,
yeah,
maybe taking those daytime naps, or trying to conserve energy. And if nothing else, work is kind of a distraction. The more you're working
yeah.
or doing something else, the less time is available for you to kind of dwell on sleep, and maybe even just catastrophize about sleep.
Yeah, I definitely think you have to have your mind taken off with, if you've got a job or children, you've just got to get on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're not working at the time, or if you've taken a day off or whatever, it's just so important to do something else, just to be active.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be out there like running a half marathon or anything like that, but just having
mm,
having something to fill your days with, just to occupy your mind. So not only are you less likely to be dwelling on sleep, that you're just recognizing that you can have some good moments during the day, even after a bad night of sleep. If you do
yeah, I
something that you
definitely think
really
that.
enjoy, like pursue a hobby during the day, if you can do that and just engage your mind and enjoy yourself, it can just help you recognize that, although a bad night of sleep is hard, is something that we
Mm,
don't want to go through. It is possible to actually have a good day, if not a good day, maybe just a few okay moments during the day after a really bad
mm,
night. And just changing that mindset can be really helpful at reducing the pressure you put on yourself to sleep, and just reducing that worry that you feel
mm.
about what the next day is going to be like after a hard night.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that, because that is the big fear when you wake up, is that, are you going to be able to function the next day? But you can. You can do it, because I do it. I do it. If I have a bad night's sleep, I can still do that.
Yeah, I think people with insomnia are experts at getting through the day after a bad night
Mm,
of sleep or no sleep. They just seem
mm,
to have this almost this extra human ability to get through the day. And it's quite ironic that this is one of the main fears of people with insomnia, is how to get through the day the next day. But if you
mm,
just take that step back and just think of all the times you have got through the day, it's pretty much every single time. Sure, the day
mm,
might be more difficult, but you do get through that day. And it's just kind of
mm,
amazing. I've heard stories of people that had these really important job interviews, the next day. They've been living with
mm,
insomnia for years. And of course, once you top that off with the worry about the job interview, it led this person to no sleep whatsoever. And this was a really
mm,
high pressure job interview. They got through it, they got offered the job, and that was after no sleep and years of insomnia. And
mm.
it's just amazing how people with insomnia do have this incredible ability to get through the day, but yet that's one of our biggest fears when we have insomnia.
It definitely is.
You also mentioned what I thought was interesting was when you were observing this shorter sleep window, so you were allotting less time for sleep just to help consolidate your sleep more, that you actually ended up looking forward to not being in bed. Now,
I did.
I thought
Yeah.
this was interesting because a lot of people, they feel a little bit worried, or maybe it triggers a little bit of anxiety when you suggest to them to spend less time in bed or to
Mm.
get out of bed when they're struggling. So can you tell us a little bit more about this? Like, what was it about allotting less time for sleep that you liked? So just explain a little bit more about this whole feeling of looking forward to not being in bed.
Well, for me, I was so anxious trying to go back to sleep and I sometimes I would go to bed earlier to
Mm,
think, oh, I'll have longer now in bed to have more opportunities to sleep. But it made the anxiety worse. So for me to just know that I had 5.5 hours to deal with, it just made me it made me have like a schedule for my night, and that was the only amount of time I had to sort of think I'd be worrying.
mhm.
um so that half hour throughout that night, I'd have some sleep within that 5.5 hours, but I knew that I could then just get out of bed and not worry anymore.
Yeah.
Sounds really silly. But it seemed a lot better for me to have that than be in bed for 10 hours with even more stress, because most of that time I'd be awake.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really important insight. And the reason that I wanted to just explore that a little bit more was because it is a common concern among people when they're first implementing these CBT-I techniques, spending less time in bed, getting out of bed when you can't sleep. Because the concern is, well, that's going to just make me more awake. Did you
Mm.
find that the process of getting out of bed during the night when you couldn't sleep, did you feel that led to less sleep or made you feel more awake?
um no, it didn't make me feel more awake, because I was already quite awake.
Mm,
The only thing I found with the knowing it had to be about half an hour was that I knew I wasn't supposed to look at the clock, which I didn't. Um, but what helped me know that I was only in bed for half an hour when I was in bed was I used to put like a meditation CD on and just listen to that, which was exactly half an hour.
mm,
So I knew that if it stopped, that I'd been in bed for half an hour and I needed to get up again. But quite often then I'd be asleep halfway through that. So,
mhm,
I sort of used my time in with that. But no, it didn't make me feel more awake.
mhm.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And as I was going through that 5.5 hours, I was getting sleepy, and you definitely sleep within that time anyway. I
Mhm.
don't think there was one night where it was like half an hour throughout the 5.5 hours and I didn't sleep at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
managed to sleep.
That's important. I think too, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, where i- it's not pleasant to be in bed when you can't sleep, right? It just doesn't feel
No.
good. That tossing and turning, the frustration, the worry, that just the way your mind works. So I find that it's often just more pleasant just to get out of bed when you're going through
Yeah.
that struggle. So rather than seeing it as this process that's just going to be torturous, getting out of bed is just going to be torture for me. Well, a lot of the time, just staying in bed can feel just as bad, if not worse. So if you're in that
Mm.
unpleasant place where you're just really battling sleep and you're in bed and you feel like you're fighting with it, then usually it's more pleasant. A more pleasant alternative is to just get out
Mm.
of bed and just do anything else, anything that you find
Mm.
relaxing and enjoyable, until you just feel a little bit more calm again, and then returning to bed and just seeing what happens then. It's almost like this mental reset switch. Just get out of bed, take a breather, just distract yourself with something else, and then go back to bed. Do you kind of find that familiar? Did you find that helpful, that just getting out of bed would
Yeah,
reset things?
it was. And I can recall mostly the first part of that course. I was actually in a cottage with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So we went away for a week. And so I was implementing all this then. And I just go down and just be in the quiet lounge for a little while. And then I think, right, okay, that's about half an hour. I've sort of calmed myself down and go back to bed, put that CD on again. And it was just a routine for me that helped me know that I was doing things that I should be
Mm.
doing. And rather than just lie there thinking, am I going to go to sleep? I'm not going to go to sleep. I was actually telling myself, I'm not going to go to sleep. So for me, that window, that sleep window, I needed it.
Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's great. So, okay, so we talked about these two specific techniques that you were following, the sleep window, sleep restrictions, just reducing the amount of time that you were allotting for sleep, and getting out of bed when you were struggling. So it sounds like you found those helpful, but were they helpful like right from the start? Were there any particular techniques that you found really hard to implement or struggle with? Maybe they got easier over time, or you just felt, no, this isn't for me. This is not going to work for me.
Um, the sleep window was hard initially, but then you just get used to it.
Upon reflection, when you think back of just kind of all the techniques that you learned over that 8 weeks of the online course, what would you say were the kind of key things that you learned as you went through the course that had the biggest effect on improving your sleep?
I think the restriction of the sleep, and then eventually I knew that I could increase that. And as I was getting better, I could have a longer sleep window.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all your advice, and when I had little hiccups, and at one point because I Google quite a lot and try not to now, but I was getting worried about the health effects that the sleep,
Mm-hmm.
the insomnia could have on me. And and you were great in getting back to me and just putting my mind at rest that it's not such a big problem. And I remember some things you typed to me, just, it doesn't matter if you don't go to sleep. That was like a big help for me. And that I tell myself that if I woke up, oh, Sara, it doesn't matter if you don't go to sleep. And then it sort of just eases your mind. It makes you think in a different way. Don't put such a large, huge thought about your sleep, and then the sleep gets better, and you just try and keep calm and just think rationally more, which I wasn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I just think you have to sometimes follow the tips you're given, and just keep going with it,
Yeah.
because nothing comes easy. And I think some people want an instant cure, and you haven't got an instant cure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. I think what you just explained is going to sound. A lot of people that are listening are going to really identify what you just said in terms of the Googling, the reading about the health effects of insomnia, and that kind of feeding into the worry. And then maybe then just trying to put that pressure on yourself to sleep, to try and control sleep. And sleep is one of these things that the more we try and control it, the more difficult it becomes. It's kind of this thing that's the exact opposite to everything else we know. So for example, I like to say, if we decide we want to become doctors, we go to school, we put in all that intense effort, we study, we sacrifice things, we just make that our goal. And if we put in enough work, enough effort, then we reach our goal. We get our degrees, we do our residencies, we become a doctor. But with sleep, if we want to improve our sleep, as soon as we try to sleep, as soon as we start studying all about sleep and researching sleep and just spending all of our days reading about it and putting effort into sleep, it just does the exact opposite outcome. It makes sleep more difficult. So I think that's really important to just emphasize that. The thing with sleep is, it's really just because it's this internal biological process, is something we just need to learn to leave alone and just kind of have to trust in our body's own ability to sleep. Because just as our body will breathe by itself, we don't need to pay attention to our breathing. It will sleep if we just kind of take that step back and try to worry less about it, and certainly try to control it less.
Yeah, I think definitely that is the case with the control, because I do like to be in control of everything. And I think that's when you feel like you're out of control. But I tell myself that everybody's capable of sleep. Everybody can sleep. And everybody goes through the sleep cycles and wakes throughout the night. It's just that some people aren't aware of it very much because they go straight back into another sleep cycle. And some people are much more aware of it. And the fear starts when you're out of that sleep cycle for a period of time and worry about it. But I know that I can sleep, and I also know now, even if I do have bouts of difficulty sleeping, it won't be for long.
Yeah.
Because I just do the strategies again. And I don't take sleeping tablets anymore, and I did used to have to take them. So they're not a long-term solution. And I know with my health worries that I didn't want to take them for a long term anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's important. What you just said as well is just so important, that it is normal to wake during the night. Wakefulness is part of sleep. So it's completely normal to wake during the night. And like you suggested, it's kind of more to do with just our reaction to those awakenings that determine
it is
if they're going to be a problem or not. So if we worry about them, it's going to make it immediately harder to fall back to sleep. But people that just don't give sleep a second thought, that have never experienced insomnia, they're still waking during the night for these short periods of time, but they just don't pay any attention to these awakenings. So they're very short, and they probably don't even remember them even occurring.
Yeah, I know exactly the same. That's how it used to be before I went on the course. And most people are not aware that they wake. It's the people who've got insomnia that are.
Yeah, and that, again, that's another really important thing that I like to try and emphasize, is that when you have insomnia, it's really tempting to talk about sleep with people that don't have insomnia, just to compare your sleep with others. And so if you talk to someone that's never thought about sleep, oh, well, how much sleep did you get last night? Well, first of all, they'll probably give you this little blank stare, because they don't know, because they haven't really paid any attention to it. But then they kind of just think, well, okay, I got in bed at 11 o'clock. I got out of bed at 7, so 8 hours. But it's very unlikely that they actually spent that full amount of time asleep, because it takes time for us to fall asleep as soon as we get into bed. Very unusual to just, your head hits the pillow and you're asleep. We've got all these awakenings during the night, even if it's just you go to the bathroom. And then a lot of us will gradually wake up a little bit before we get out of bed. So once you add up all those little awakenings, time taken to fall asleep, time taken to kind of wake up and get out of bed, they're probably closer to 6, maybe 7 hours of sleep. So that can just lead to more worry, because you're thinking, well, this person's getting 8 hours, this person's getting 8 hours, but in fact they're probably getting much less than that. But it's no problem for these people, because they're not thinking about sleep. They're not kind of monitoring their days for the effects of their sleep. And they just take this hands-off approach, so they have no problem with sleep.
Yeah, and it's actually, I've had conversations when people have said to me, oh, but you've got to have a minimum of 8 hours sleep. And I said, well, actually you don't, because
Hmm.
as long as you've got 5.5 hours of core sleep, you're fine, you can function. And I don't care what they say to me. I just say, you don't need 8 hours sleep every night.
It's such a big myth, and nobody really knows where that idea that we should be getting 8 hours comes from. Um,
Mm,
uh, Everyone, there probably are some people out there that need 8 hours of sleep, but they're going to really be in the minority. Everyone has their own unique sleep requirement. So someone might only need 5.5 or 6 hours every single night, feel great during the day, and that's fine. Someone else might need 7, someone else might need 8. Everyone is different. It's kind of like shoe sizes. Everyone has a different shoe size.
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to say to someone, no, you've got to fit in a size 8 shoe.
Mm.
You know?
No, I think that.
And it just leads to more worry, and it can trigger insomnia too, because if you're someone
Mm,
that does perfectly fine on, let's say, 6 hours of sleep. You feel great during the day. You're healthy. You're not fatigued during the day. You never really think about sleep. As soon as then that you try to get more sleep, it
mm,
can lead to even less sleep and then more worry. And then it kind of triggers this whole cycle of worrying about sleep and less sleep, and that lead into even more worry. So this kind of myth that we all should be aiming for 8 hours is something that we really need to get rid of. And we really need to somehow stop people talking about, because not only is it inaccurate, but it can actually be a big driver of sleep related anxiety.
yeah, I definitely think too much emphasis on that makes it all worse.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, when you just kind of mentioned this, that you were taking sleeping pills at one point, but now you're
Mm,
not. I think actually when you very first enrolled, when you started working with me, you were actually also taking them, but then by the end you weren't. So, can you just tell us about that process? Did you follow like a specific tapering off process? Did you kind of force yourself to stop, or was it more of a case of you just started to notice improvements in your sleep and so you felt less reliant on them?
I didn't taper off as such in a methodical way. I sort of mentally just told myself that if I, they were always there,
Mm,
um, and that maybe twice a week, if I absolutely had to, that they were there. But it was sort of more of a just as a something in the back of my mind that
mhm,
I didn't throw them out, but I didn't rely on them then. When I was doing the course, as I was progressing through the course, I knew that I needed to do the strategies to change my way of thinking.
mhm,
I knew that I had to change the way that I thought about it all to get better.
mhm,
Because the tablets I couldn't take for the rest of my life, so I I didn't just like every other day, that sort of process coming off them. I more or less just stopped them. And I just knew that I had them there mentally in my mind that I could fall back on if I ever had to.
mhm,
It's like just a last resort.
mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
Did you find that you ever kind of had this really bad night, for example, and you felt that you just weren't going to sleep unless you took that sleeping pill, and then so then you reached for that sleeping pill, or did you find that you were actually quite disciplined about it and you were just determined and decided that yes, they're available, but no, I'm not going to use them?
Um, Occasionally, if it was like maybe once or twice, I would take one,
Hmm.
but then you can't implement all the strategies when you do that.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And then the
think.
following day you're over, you're sluggish. So you don't think properly then.
Mm. Yeah, I think one of the issues that when I think a lot of people are going to identify with this idea of just having them available, because that can just be
Mm,
quite reassuring. Um, but sometimes what the problem can be if you take a sleeping pill contingently. So let's say that tonight you've decided that I'm not going to take a sleeping pill no matter what, and then
mm,
you get to like 2 or 3 in the morning and you're kind of really struggling, and then you reach for that pill and then you get those few hours of sleep. The only potential issue there can be is that you can kind of learn to think that you only slept because you took that pill. So you
Yes.
can kind of lose this, just lose a trust in your own ability to sleep, because you don't associate, then the risk is you don't associate that sleep you got just with your own ability to sleep. You kind of
Yeah.
attribute all that sleep to the sleeping pill, and just for the long term sometimes that can be a problem, because one of our aims in these with these CBT-I techniques in terms of changing the
Mm.
way you think about sleep is just to help you get that confidence back, and for you to recognize that sleep is this core biological function that never goes away. You can always sleep. And just having that trust in your own ability to sleep is just so important. And sometimes if you just take a sleeping pill, here or there, if you attribute that sleep just from the pill, it can kind of erode that confidence, and make it harder for you to get that confidence in your own ability to sleep back.
No, I definitely think that. Um, it's usually it was usually if I knew I had, like, the first day of work,
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the week, because you've had a weekend off,
Mm-hmm.
and then then you think it's going to help you. But most of the time I'm fine. This is since I've done the course.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I'm absolutely fine, and I do just go back to sleep. I wake for a little while sometimes, and then I just think, don't worry about it. And as soon as I start telling myself not to worry about it, it doesn't matter if I don't go back to sleep. That's what I say. It doesn't matter if I don't go back to sleep. And then you do. You just go
Mm-hmm.
back to sleep.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, is just to try and remove some of that worry, because let's say that you wake up and you think, oh, I'm not going to fall back to sleep. If okay, that might be true, it might not be true. I'm sure there are times you've thought you're not going to fall back to sleep and you did, and
Mm,
vice versa. But let's say that you end up not falling back to sleep. Sleep drive is still going to be building, so it's not like
mm,
all that sleep is gone and it's not all doom and gloom, because sleep, if you're not sleeping, then sleep drive just keeps building. This sleep pressure just keeps building and building and building, and eventually you will sleep. It's
yeah.
completely impossible for you to stay awake indefinitely. And so as long as you kind of restrict that opportunity for sleep during the sleep window, when that sleep happens, it's going to be happening at a time when you want to be sleeping. And
Mm,
by making sure that you're only in your own bed when you sleep, it's going to be happening in your own bed. So sleep does improve. It's just about taking that worry away from it, and just really just learning to trust your own ability to sleep, and that the body will give you the sleep that it needs when it needs it.
yeah, it does happen, definitely. You just can't keep going, as you say, without any sleep at all.
Mm-hmm.
You just get so tired in the end that you do sleep.
Yeah.
And
So
then you get confident with it.
yeah, and that's key, right? It's just that confidence. And I can just tell that just in talking to you, where you're saying, I just don't worry about it,
Mm.
and that's just a key symptom of confidence, just not worrying about it.
But also realizing, because throughout your life you do go back to moments where you have trouble sleeping. You get, there was a time, within this year of completing the course, where my dog was very, very sick,
Hmm.
and it really affected my anxiety levels, because we didn't think she was going to get better, but she did, thank goodness. And my sleep pattern changed then, and I worried. I did worry initially. Oh my goodness, it's going to start all over again. But then I just quickly tried to put those strategies back in and tried to take my mind off my dog, and just telling myself, yeah, you can sleep, and tomorrow you'll be fine. And I didn't have any time off work,
Hmm.
so I just carried on through it, and got up when I needed to get up, went back to sleep, got up, just carried on with the routine. And then I overcame that sort of period where I did slip back a bit
Hmm.
with my sleep, and I just thought, no, I'm not going to go back to that. I know I can sleep. I've done it before, and I'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important too, is just to recognize that there are always going to be bad nights of sleep every now and then. Whenever we
Mm,
go through a stressful period, like you just explained, it would be unusual for you to sleep really well if you're worried about your pet's health, for example. That
mm,
that would be really unusual for you to still just sleep completely undisturbed. And what can happen is, when we've experienced insomnia in the past, we can worry, when that completely expected night of bad sleep occurs, we can worry that, the insomnia is coming back. I'm back to square
Amen.
one. It's all happening again. But then what can happen is just the very process of worrying about that entirely expected bad night heightens your anxiety and then leads to a second night of poor sleep, and so you kind
Yeah.
of exacerbate the problem by being concerned about it. So I think it's also really helpful not only to expect bad nights every now and then because they're completely normal, but just when you do have a bad night, just spend like a few seconds just thinking, all right, was there an external cause for that bad night? So just like you experience, oh, my dog has this health issue, so therefore it's completely normal I would have a bad night. And just recognizing that can just be really helpful in terms of keeping your sleep on track for the long term.
No, I do think you just have to accept that you are going to have these ups and downs in life, and when you get them, that you may have sleep problems, but that it'll improve because those problems in your life improve generally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said earlier, it's how you react to things.
Mm-hmm.
People who are positive and react in that positive way to any example of stress have an easier time dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, it's how you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to react more positively than negatively is the answer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, one of the models that we have for how insomnia develops is it kind of starts off just with some people are just more predisposed to sleep disruption, so they're already a little bit higher up on that starting scale of sleep disruption risk. So we might just be more reactive to stress or anxiety, or we might have stressful jobs or anything like that, so we're more susceptible to that 1 or 2 nights of sleep disruption. But it's always our response that determines if it's just this one-off event or if it's going to be a longer term problem, whether that's just a thought process response or a behavioral response, such as spending more time in bed and trying to rest or conserve energy, or maybe a combination of the two. That's what kind of moves it just from these 1 or 2 occasional blips to a longer term problem.
Yeah, it is. It's how you react and how you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
all about how you think about it.
yeah, I completely agree. So when you were going through the course, you did make some really good progress. I just want to just briefly, when you first enrolled, like for example, I think it was taking you like almost 2 hours to fall asleep at the start of the night. And then by the time you ended that, it kind of dropped to around 15 minutes. And I think your average nightly sleep duration when you first enrolled, like the first week, it was about 4.5 hours. And then by the end, it was 6 hours. But I think what's really encouraging for a lot of people listening to this was just the long-term improvement. So you stopped working with me after 8 weeks. And then I just do these follow-ups, after 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and a year, because you finished over a year ago now. And still, I think it still takes you falling asleep pretty quickly, like 10, 15 minutes, averaging like 7 hours of sleep. Does that sound right? Like, am I kind of reflecting on your results and your progress accurately here?
Yeah, definitely, because I hardly take any time to go to sleep now. And my job's still quite stressful. But I really look forward to going to bed. I've got a new bed. It's really comfortable, and I just think, oh, this is nice. And I do have about 7 hours on average in the nights.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think just that key, the fact that you now look forward to going to bed, you look forward to sleep, is just such a change in mindset. Because I'm sure that if when we first started working together, I'd have said to you, oh, well, it's bedtime in an hour or two. How are you feeling about that? Probably would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, I used to get so stressed about the time it was leading up to going to bed. I used to actually get anxious about it in the evening. I wouldn't be enjoying my evening. Because I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, it's getting close to the time. I've got to go and try and go to sleep. And it was such a fear. I built up a massive fear about the whole thing. And if I could have got away with not sleeping at all, I think I would have, because
Mm,
I was so worried about going to bed to try. I've got some things I do. I put lavender lotion on, it's all little like things that mentally just help me to prepare to go to bed. And I'll got just little lavender spray and little things like that I still use, because it helped me. It helps to just unwind and have a shower, have all
mhm.
these nice smells, and just prepares you to go to bed anyway. I don't think that hurts to carry on with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those processes are all fine as long as you just recognize that they're just things that you find enjoyable and relaxing.
Mm,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
the only potential risk, the only time that they can be unconstructive is if you think that somehow they're generating sleep, or that, if you miss that one night of putting lavender on your pillow, then you're not going to sleep.
yeah,
If you see them as a way of generating sleep, then that can be a problem. But if you see it as just something that you enjoy, that helps
yeah.
you
It's like
relax,
it does. That's what I do. It's
yeah.
like a relaxation thing, and listening to nice calming things before you go to bed is
Hmm.
nice to do, rather than being on. A lot of people are on their phones all the time, and their brain is wired before they go to bed.
Hmm.
So just try and relax in some way before you go to bed is helpful.
Yeah, and everyone is different, so whereas one person might enjoy the smell of lavender and or listening to calming,
Mm,
relaxing music, someone else might, I don't know, like to do crosswords or watch a movie.
yeah,
Everyone is different,
yeah.
and as long as you just do anything that you just find relaxing, that you personally just find helps you unwind and just distracts you,
Mm,
maybe from thinking about sleep as well.
yeah.
Is fine. There's really no hard and fast rules for what you should be doing shortly before bed, other than
Mm,
something you find relaxing and enjoyable, and something that
mm,
you don't come to believe is creating sleep for you.
yeah,
There's,
definitely.
you can just end up going down the rabbit hole. I've had clients that believed that this certain brand of tea that they drank at night, if they didn't drink it, then they wouldn't sleep.
Mm,
So,
mm,
so then the problem is, then you're looking for this new type of tea or this new supplement or this new sleep crutch, to create that sleep for
mm.
you, because you don't recognize that it's just your own body that's generating that sleep.
Yeah, it is.
The tea is nice if you enjoy drinking it and if you find it relaxing, that's fine. But it's never creating sleep. So as long as you recognize that,
Yeah.
um, anything you do at night is fine.
But yeah, I think the relaxing part is important if you're sort of an anxious person,
Hmm.
because that relaxing of your mind before helps you to mentally think in the positive, correct way,
Hmm.
rather than going to bed anxious.
Hmm.
So
Were you someone
yeah.
that had always tried these relaxation techniques or things like that? Or was this something that you learned or practiced only after you started developing insomnia?
No, I've had relaxation, like guided therapy things for
Hmm.
health anxiety. So I've always believed that it's nice to calm your mind. It
Hmm.
can distract your mind away from things, and put your mind in a better place to take on board all the techniques you need to do as well.
Hmm. Yeah, the reason I asked you was just because a lot of people don't recognize or don't realize that relaxation is actually a skill. It's not
Mm,
something, oh, I'm going to try meditation tonight, for example, and
yeah,
then you try meditating and your mind's going a mile a minute and you just think, oh, this isn't working, this is not for me, and then you just stop. you know
yeah, no,
it's really important that it is a skill, and it takes a lot of practice, in order to get good at relaxation. And it's also just important to make the goal of relaxation and not sleep.
yeah,
As soon as
yeah,
we kind of make sleep the goal, we kind of undo any of the potential benefits of that relaxation process.
yeah, definitely. Relaxation is just nice at any time.
Mm.
Just mindfulness as well. I think that's important to just be aware of what's going on at that moment, not anything else.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's really interesting, because don't you find that, uh, when you had insomnia, a lot of your worries were about the future? For example,
Mm,
how am I going to get through the next day? Am I going to sleep tonight? And so
yeah,
mindfulness is really helpful, I think, because it just brings you back to the present. Well, why am I worrying about that now? Because that stuff is in the future. That doesn't matter now. So I'm just ruining my entire day and my entire night thinking about what ifs, whereas
I
all I
know.
should really be focused on is just the now.
Yeah, definitely. My husband had a good strategy with when you just wake, just be aware of your head's on the pillow, enjoy the pillow, just relax into it, relax all your body, feel the bed sheets on your body, and just think about those things, and just calm your mind, because your mind just escalates otherwise onto what if, what if, what if, and just think about what you're actually doing, and just try and calm your heartbeat down. And I do think that it's important to try and relax your mind, and relaxing your body helps to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of people as well with the stimulus control techniques, that the CBT-I technique that suggests that you should be getting out of bed if you're struggling to fall asleep, is I like to say, if you're awake for like roughly half an hour and you're really struggling and you're battling, then get out of bed. But if you're in bed and you're still feeling calm and relaxed, maybe just what you were describing, you're just enjoying just that feeling of lying on your pillow, being in bed. It feels cozy, you're calm and relaxed. Really, there's no need to get out of bed because you're calm and relaxed. And so the conditions are right for sleep. It's only really a concern. We want to kind of be getting you out of that environment when it becomes unpleasant to be in bed.
Yeah, and if you, as I was, if you're at that stage where you aren't relaxed and not able to do that, then it's pointless being there in bed, because you're just fretful, and getting up and just having that little time where you think, right, let's try again, and just go back and see what happens. It's just see what happens. I think a really big thing for me was just keep telling myself it doesn't matter if you don't sleep, because it's such a pressure to make yourself to sleep. And as soon as you tell yourself it doesn't matter if you don't, it really works. You just go to sleep. It's just trying not to pressure yourself, thinking I have to go to sleep, I have to go to sleep, because you don't have to. It doesn't matter if you don't sleep at that moment. And that's what I tell myself all the time now. If I wake, it doesn't matter. And then before I know it, I've gone back to sleep. And then sometimes I don't even know if I've gone back to sleep or not. And then I think, oh yes, I can remember that dream now. I did go back to sleep, actually.
Yeah, that I think that's great. Is so much of it is just changing your mindset. Don't you feel like just learning not to worry about sleep? And as soon as you kind of remove that worry or that temptation to try and control sleep or force sleep, sleep just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, it does. And then, I just feel much more normal now, because I didn't feel normal before. Because you just almost feel as if you're on your own, even though there's lots of other people who have insomnia. I did anyway. I just felt, oh, I'm the only person with this. Nobody else can be as bad as me. Look at me. I mean, at one point, sometimes I'd have an hour and a half sleep, and I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, everyone else is having a normal life and I'm not. And it got to the point where I was thinking, I can't do nice things because I'm too tired to do them. And as soon as you change that way of thinking, you have to sleep, you start to sleep again, and also realizing that you aren't on your own, and there are lots of people who have similar struggles, and people like you who can help. You can talk to people who've got the knowledge to know what to do to improve it. Because going on the internet, looking at Google, it gives you so much other things that make you worried. I try really hard not to do that anymore, because you type in insomnia and it comes up all these other crazy things that you don't know about, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to know what's right from wrong with regard to things like worrying about not getting enough sleep, and the impact on your body, and there's all sorts on there that are not actually true, that could scare people and then make their insomnia worse.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so much of the sleep related worry and fear is, I think, generated by all these articles that are online and even just in newspapers and magazines
Mm,
that look at these studies. But one thing that's really important to bear in mind is that very few of these studies actually look at people with insomnia. They tend to look at sleep deprivation, which is different. You know, sleep deprivation is more about burning the candles on both ends. You know, you're not giving yourself enough opportunity to sleep, and so therefore you're not getting enough
mm,
sleep. So a lot
yeah.
of these studies, they will get people that have no issue with sleep, put them in like a lab, or tell them that they're not allowed to sleep for more than 2 or 3 hours, you know, and kind of
Mm,
extrapolate results from there. um,
mm,
and even ones that do use insomnia, the common trait is none of these studies are finding causation. You know, some of them are finding associations, but it's just in the same way that if you look at houses that have ashtrays, perhaps there might be a higher incidence of cancer in those households. That doesn't mean that the
mm,
ashtrays are causing cancer. You know, there's something
mm,
else that's causing the cancer. And that's so important to bear in mind, is that all these articles, when you actually dig into them and you look behind the headlines, you'll see words like may or could or
mm,
associated with. You know, there's never anything that says short sleep or insomnia causes any health problem whatsoever. There's not one single
mm,
study that's found that. So
mm,
that's something that's really important to just emphasize, because that is generally what you'll find anytime that you Google insomnia or sleep deprivation or insufficiency.
mm. No, definitely. Because most people are using the internet to try and find um, a solution,
Mhm.
and along the way they get worried more
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
of ill advice.
Yeah, I would just encourage anyone that's struggling with insomnia, if you are going to look online and use Google, is to just Google cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia,
Yeah.
because it's just this great collection of techniques. And you kind of touched on this. One of the reasons why I'm such a big fan is because it's, in a way, it's just this skill set, right? And it stays with you for life. So anytime
Mm,
you feel that you're struggling again in the future, you just put the techniques back into place and it helps get your sleep back on track, because it's just
mm,
a collection of skills that never go away. They're always with you.
they are, and you do need to use them occasionally,
Mhm.
and they're embedded because you've done it for for a long while, so you know you know what to do.
Yeah.
um you just need to just implement them when necessary.
Hmm. Exactly. All right. Well, Sarah, I've taken a lot of your time and I really appreciate it. I did just want to ask you one more question that I always ask people right at the end. So here's the question. If someone with chronic insomnia is listening and feels as though they've tried everything, that they're beyond help, they can't do anything to improve their sleep, what would you tell them?
I would honestly say, and this is really from my heart, I would definitely say to do your course,
Oh,
because because you were so personal with your help for me, and I'm sure you are with other people, just as personal and helpful. And I actually felt through all the strategies and emails and all the videos and everything that I did along the way was catered just for me. I don't know how you made me feel like that, but I felt as if you were like my personal therapist
mhm,
of sleep coaching.
mhm,
And I could just feel that I could rely on you, and that you didn't mind me emailing you, and you always responded.
mhm,
So I felt that I wasn't alone anymore, and that you were definitely going to sort me out, and I just had faith in you. um, and I don't know how other courses would be, but I would 100% guarantee success, because as long as you do all the things that you advise, then it works.
mhm.
um, and so my advice to anybody, and I think I'm the worst that's ever had insomnia, is to do your course, because you get better.
Oh, Well, I really appreciate that. It's very humbling to hear you say
Hmm.
that. I really appreciate it. I just want to say, just in response, that I just want you to also recognize that all of the success that you've enjoyed is down to your effort. You know, I kind of see myself as the guide. I can kind of explain to you techniques that are helpful and help you change your way of thinking about sleep, but it's really up to you, or up to anyone that I work with, to take that information and to use it, and to be really committed to the techniques and to implement them, because like you explained earlier, some of them are hard. So I really want you to recognize that you are the driver of your success. You know, I was there next to you to guide you along, but really all the success you've enjoyed is just down to your own efforts and your own commitment to the techniques.
Oh, thank you as well. No, I think it's a two-way process.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. It is important to have a good relationship with whoever you're working with. Takes back and forth. You need to have someone that you believe in and that you feel comfortable communicating with. And then at the same time, you need to be accountable, you know, and just implement the techniques. And I completely agree with you too, that you will be successful if you just are consistent and you are committed, and make your focus just implementing the techniques. You know, this is what I have to do,
Mm.
this is what I'm going to do, and just removing all that mental gymnastics and all that self-doubt and all the question marks, and just going all in, you know, going all in. Just say, I'm
Mm.
just going to go all in for a few weeks and just see what happens. And far more likely than not, you're going to get results. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. You get results.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sarah,
Mm.
thank you so much for giving up so much of your time. I think that what we've discussed, a lot of people are going to recognize their own insomnia experience in what you've shared, and hopefully it will just motivate people to look more into CBTI and just give them the belief that they can get through their insomnia just like you did. So thank you.
It's okay. Good luck to everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Insomnia Coach podcast. If you're ready to implement cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia CBT-I techniques to improve your sleep, but think you might need some additional support and guidance, I would love to help. There are two ways we can work together. First, you can get my online coaching course. This is the most popular option. My course combines sleep education with unlimited support and guidance, and is guaranteed to improve your sleep. I will teach you and help you implement new CBT-I techniques over a period of 8 weeks. This gives you time to build sleep confidence and notice results without feeling overwhelmed. You can get the course and start right now at insomniacoach.com/online. I also offer a phone coaching package where we start with a 1-hour call. This can be voice only or video, your choice, and we come up with an initial 2-week plan that will have you implementing CBT-I techniques that will lead to long-term improvements in your sleep. You get unlimited email-based support and guidance for 2 weeks after the call, along with a half-hour follow-up call at the end of the 2 weeks. You can book the phone coaching package at insomniacoach.com/phone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Insomnia Coach podcast. I'm Martin Reed, and as always, I'd like to leave you with this important reminder: you can sleep.